Peace to everybody coming in the room. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. It's been a long time. But hello, everybody. Go tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that the sanctuary is live. We've missed y'all. Hi. Is it Shantae? Forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, my love. Hello, my love. I hope you guys are having a really good day. There may be some noise around me as I'm outside, so y'all forgive me if the background noise becomes distracting. I'm not even going to be on here long, but there is some messages that I wanted to come through and to give. As you guys know, this weekend we are coming out of a full moon in Aries. I hope that you all had a wonderful full moon and that you were able to spend time with yourself, even if you weren't in ritual. I still hope that you all were able to enjoy this full moon and really take in what this energy came and to give you during this full moon cycle. Hi, my T. I love you. Peace and love. So I hope that you guys are having a wonderful, or did have a wonderful full moon in Aries. I know I'm coming in on the end tail of this, and that's okay. Because we had a really eventful weekend. That's why you guys haven't really been seeing us live or coming on as frequent, because we've just had a lot going on. We've had a lot of book orders going out. We've been expanding in so many different ways. You guys know that we have my book that's going to be dropping, that we've been working really hard to get finished and edited in order for us to finally release it. So the sanctuary has had a lot going on. For those of you who are new to the sanctuary, hello. My name is Rumunera Holland Bay, and I am one half of the sanctuary here at Holland Spices. And on the other side, you guys can find my amazing, magical, sexy wife, who I affectionately call Mrs. Holland. And you all can address her as Mrs. Holland too, or you can address her as Akila Assad Holland. She is around here working and doing stuff, but she sends her love and she sends her hello. And so if you're new to the sanctuary, welcome. Feel free to go on over to the website at www.hollandspices.com. The link is in the bio. And feel free to look over, at all of the spiritual tools and the medicinal medicines that we handcraft here at the sanctuary, that are one of a kind, and that are very much intentionally crafted in order to assist you, and be it your spiritual journey or assist you in your medicinal journey. And so feel free to hop on over to the website and check us out. And those of you who have been with us since the beginning, you guys will find that we have been restocking the sanctuary for the last few weeks of some really fave oldies that we were making at the beginning of the launch of the sanctuary. And then once we transitioned here to Arizona, we haven't brought back a lot of the goodness that we used to make. And so those of you who have been following us for a while, you guys will know that we just did a restock, and we're continuing to restock the sanctuary. And so our soaps are back. Currently, right now, we have our eczema TLC bar, which is wonderful if you have skin ailments, if you deal with severe eczema, or even if you don't deal with eczema, maybe you deal with psoriasis. I highly recommend our eczema TLC bar. It was one of our best sellers back in the day, and it took 2 years to bring it back, and so it's finally back. So y'all head on over to the website if you need it, or if you know someone who is in need of some medicinal assistance. Feel free to go on over to the website and pick you up a bar of our eczema TLC, a soap bar. And another one of our favorites that is back is our baptized spiritual soap bar. For those of you who are accustomed to taking your spiritual baths, but you don't always have time to sit down and collect your herbs, or to sit down and pick each herb that fits the necessary intentions, but you want to engage in your spiritual hygiene, making sure that you stay on top of your spiritual hygiene, I encourage you guys to check out our Baptized Spiritual Soap Bar, which is another wonderful, wonderful spiritual tool that we were producing at the launch of Highland Spices, and it took 2 years to bring it back. And so it's revamped, it's even better, and dare I say, if not more powerful than what it was when we first started out. And so head on over to the website and pick you up a Baptized Spiritual Soap Bar. I promise you it's going to bless and change your life. But let's get to the business. Yo, I feel like it's been so long. This almost feels foreign to me, but I'm so happy to see a lot of you in the building with us. I wasn't really expecting too many people to hop on. I know that I had just got on this morning from my page and let you guys know that I was going to be going live, and I really don't want to be on here too long, but I did want to come on and just give you guys some of the messages that you know, Spirit has been dealing with me with concerning this full moon, and also concerning divine timing. You know, I'm learning the importance of silence, and I'm learning the importance of holding your tongue when Spirit is actively putting you through what they're teaching you. You know, I think right now we're in a generation or in a time where there's so much information that's coming forward. There's so many viewpoints that are coming forward. You know, there's so many opinions from so many different viewpoints that have been coming forward, and a lot of times it can get very hard to decipher between what is your voice and what is someone else's voice. And so and all of the knowledge that I've been getting on here and teaching over the last 5 or so years, in some ways I found myself ahead of my time. And I think for a lot of us, we can become very discouraged, you know, when our seasons don't look like what Spirit and where Spirit is showing us that we're going, you know. And a lot of times we can move out of season, and we can teach out of season too, you know. And you may not always get the response or the reaction or the acceptance that you want, you know, concerning the missions and the visions that Spirit has, you know, individually placed in your hand, concerning not only your individual life, but concerning your purpose as it relates to the collective. A lot of times we can move out of season and hurt our own feelings. And so in my silence and in a lot of my reflecting, I'm finding that Spirit is really proofing me and a lot of the understandings that I have come into knowing and into remembering over, you know, the last 5 years or so. And so my silence has become very intentional, because everything ain't always meant to say, you know. And a lot of times we can be talking and sharing and giving information, and a lot of times the world and the people around you are not ready to receive that, you know. And so I'm learning in this season of my life to really understand the importance and the necessity for silence, you know, and learning when to speak in timing, you know, and learning to really understand timing, even if I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something right now. I'm learning how to just sit on and reflect on the information and the downloads that's been coming in at this time, because, you know, for just as much as we have and we see people really on and operating in the things of Spirit, it's just as much as we can look around and see people taking advantage of the things of Spirit, you know, in turn taking advantage of you. And, you know, because a lot of us are just looking for the answers and looking for the understandings of our journeys, and then wanting to know the missions of where we're going, that we'll accept a word from any and everybody, because whether it's your need of wanting to be and feel important, whether it's validating the need that you matter, whether it's validating the need that you are a necessary, moving, functional part of this collective universe that we're all operating in, when a lot of times Spirit is just trying to get us to tune everything out and to just go into the self. And I think that has really been the general message, from Spirit. Before anything else, before ritual, before readings, any type of reading, before conjuring, before calling in spirits, before any of that, we really have to understand and begin to really understand the most important part of this spiritual walk. And it's really coming into the greatest understandings of ourselves. And a lot of times that's not going to be popular. A lot of times the people around you are not going to move on that same frequency that you're moving on, because oftentimes they're not called or meant to. Spirit is really shifting us into a season of being ready to go, even if the things around you are in a season of stopping. Are you going to be willing to continue to make the necessary adjustments? Are you going to continue to make the necessary sacrifices to really not only aesthetically function in the things of Spirit, but to really allow Spirit to reveal within you the total transformation of the being? And I feel like this conversation today, and I feel like a lot of this full moon in Aries is really charging us and really lighting a fire under our ass to really see ourselves once and for all, and to really prioritize what matters, to really begin to reassess what matters, and to really begin to find your justice as well, to stand on your justice, to believe in the justice that that you require and that you deserve. There is a balancing of scales of sorts, in this season. And I think that you guys are going to see that a lot in this message today. And so let me just jump into it, because I feel like I'm rambling and I really don't want to be on here long. But this live today is going to be concerning the downloads of this full moon in Aries that Source has been dealing with me with, and that I think concerns the collective. And so when this energy was coming in, the messages actually started, and I was on the phone with my sister T. And I don't know if we physically talked on the phone, but I know I was really bothering her this morning through text message when I woke up. This was probably on the 7th. The messages started to come in on the 7th. And Spirit is really going to really begin dealing with us as it relates to the government, that crone energy, the 10th house energy, as it relates to public status. And these are all notes and things that I was able to gather from my sister, who is an astrologer that I trust, because she is very knowledgeable and the information that she gives, and is very knowledgeable and really helping me understand planetary alignments and how they correlate to the downloads that Spirit has been giving me. Because once again, and I say all the time, I'm not an astrologer. I don't profess to be an astrologer, but oftentimes the way in which I deal with Spirit, there always seems to be a validating correlation between the downloads that Spirit is giving to me and how they planetarily align. And so my sister T, who you guys can also find on Instagram at Egypti Tarot, I had hit her up concerning any planetary energy that was happening in the 10th house on this day. And there was a lot of planetary energy that was happening on this day. And a lot of that energy also played a part in my own personal natal chart, and it validated why a lot of this energy was going on. But Spirit is really taking a focus on 10th house things. So public status, being in the public structures, business. Spirit is say, my sister T let me know that the end of the month is going to be ending in the sign of Scorpio, and that is very powerful for me, because I feel like whenever I think about the energy of the Scorpion, I feel like the energy of the Scorpion to me teaches us the greatest lesson of self-transformation. And a lot of times, oftentimes than not, how we learn self-transformation through the sign of Scorpio is by the affliction of ourselves, of how we inflict ourselves. You know, oftentimes we live in a generation, especially today, that before lessons are learned, we got to sting ourselves. You know, before we can put two and two together, that damn, my actions are directly correlating to why I find myself dealing with depression, or why I find myself dealing with frustration, or why I find myself dealing with stagnant energy, why I find myself dealing with blocked energy. Oftentimes, it's not until we're out of the storm that we're able to see that the storm originally began because of you, because of our own actions. You know, be it something that source was trying to get you to learn in the greater and in the bigger picture, or whether it was something that you were being hard-headed, and so Spirit had to sit you down in order for you to learn a lesson. So this full moon in Aries, Spirit is really going to be dealing with us concerning 10th house things. And so we're going to begin to see a lot of things change structurally as it relates to governmental things, and as it relates to how we see people in the public eye, or how you're seen in the public eye. Okay. But three things that were coming up very heavily for me, and it took me back to, and T, you're on here so you can give me a greater understanding of how these two things came back around. Because this full moon in Aries was really kind of finishing up the full moon that we had in Libra on April the 16th, right? And during that April full moon, I'm sorry, it was in, hold on y'all, because I'm looking at my notes and I want to get this right. So this full moon in Aries is really finishing up the full moon that we had in Libra on April the 16th. And during that April 16th full moon, Spirit was really dealing with me concerning, y'all know that I teach biblically, or I teach from the Bible in an esoteric manner, which is the way that the Bible should have always been taught. Before it was used as a religious weapon, it was originally an esoteric tool that should have been used to teach a being how to go from the lower man and how to ascend to the highest aspects of themselves, but it wasn't taught that way. And so during that full moon in Aquarius, during that full moon in Libra, Spirit had begun dealing with me concerning Passover, concerning Pentecost, and concerning the Feast of Tabernacles. And all this comes back up because my really good friend Ronnie, who is on here, he had DM'd me a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about Rosh Hashanah. Now, why Rosh Hashanah was very important was because Rosh Hashanah deals with Pentecost, it deals with the Feast of Tabernacles, and it deals with Passover. And we're going to look metaphysically at these things, because this is where Spirit is really dealing with us, in my opinion, concerning this full moon in Aries. And so these could be some of the things that you guys see playing out concerning the necessary lessons that Spirit is really desiring for us to get as we get ready to close out this year. So let's look at Passover. So this 10th month is going to be very important, and we're going to see a lot of structural changes happen that's not only going to affect you as the individual, but it's going to affect how we operate on a collective scale. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But let's deal with Passover. When we look at Passover, Passover is an annual feast that the Israelites used to commemorate their escape from Egypt. Okay, when we look metaphysically at Passover, Passover represents the freeing of the spiritual man from the dominion of his senses. And so we're in a season right now where Spirit is really desiring for us to get a hold of our senses and to get a hold of the addiction to operating out of the senses, meaning that you allow your emotions and the things that you feel to dictate the world around you, right? Or you are allowing the world around you to curate itself concerning how you feel emotionally. So you wake up today, you woke up in a depressed energy. You woke up being very angry, but there's nothing pressing that will cause you to feel that way, right? And so instead of you waking up and using that your power to decree and to declare that today is going to be a day of success. Today is going to be a day of high energy. Today is going to be a day of high vibrating energy. I'm only going to engage in the highest conversations. I'm only going to engage with the highest of energy when I'm coming in and being introduced to new people. I'm only going to give my energy to the things that are going to cause me to feel elevated. I'm only going to eat foods that are going to cause me to feel good in my body and to feel good in my mind. And I'm going to take a break from anything that's causing the chemical levels in my body to be unbalanced, right? So this is coming down to choices, right? So the same way that we make the choice to be unhealthy, whether being unhealthy deals with being unhealthy in your spirit, man, being unhealthy in your mental attitude, or being unhealthy in your physical life, at some point, getting to the world curating around you that you're not happy with, somewhere during that process, you had to make a choice, right? So Passover is really going to be dealing with getting a hold of our senses. Understanding that everything that you feel is not real. Every feeling that you have doesn't necessarily have a purpose or serve a purpose, right? So Spirit is really trying to now take the spiritual being from a place of operating out of I feel and coming into the dominion of what do you know to be true. And a lot of times what you know has no feeling attached to it, right? A lot of times what you know to be factual has no emotion attached to it. It has no feeling attached to it. Sometimes it has no logic attached to it. Not the logic that makes sense to the perception that you're currently holding, right? So Spirit is bringing the spirit man from a place of operating in, oh, I feel this today, so this must be true. Because for some of you, your feelings are getting you caught up. Your senses are getting you caught up. Your senses are creating a world around you that no longer fits the frequency that you are ascending to. Right? As we close out this energy of this full moon in Aries, Spirit is really desiring for us to be free from being dominated by our senses and dominated by our emotions, but to be logical. Okay? Passover also represents moving out of one state of consciousness to another. And I think right now we're in a time where everything is gimmicky. Everything can be turned into a profit. Everything can be hijacked. And so you lose the essence of what spirituality was supposed to serve. The reason why Spirit is ascending us from being the religious man and is alchemicalizing us to understand the necessary power in becoming the spirit man, right? And the spirit man, it can't be sold. It can't be given to you. It can't be bought. It can't be forced into you. It has to be something that you consciously choose, right? And oftentimes, choosing to operate out of the spiritual body is not popular. It's not popular because it's not flowing along with where the wave of the world is going right now. But Spirit is really urging you to not get caught, not to be drowned out by the waves, not to be flooded with your pleasures, not to be caught up in the pleasure of your senses, that you're overtaken by them, right? That you create an unnatural storm around you that you never had to be in. Going with the wave in this season is going to take you off of your position. Even if everybody is doing it, Spirit is beckoning you to go the other way. And I don't know who that's for, but this Aries full moon is really beckoning you to go the other way and not to be overtaken by your senses, and to consciously choose in this season to elevate from one state to the next. To elevate from one state to the next, okay? And understanding that this ascension of going from one state of consciousness into the next state of consciousness, which is to be aware. And are you going to have enough awareness to know when Spirit is switching? We did the warn. We lived the season of warning. We lived the season of alerting when Spirit was getting us ready. Okay. We then lived the season of information. The overflood of information. The overflood of truth telling, the overflooding of this is my opinion, the overflooding of this is my understanding. And now Spirit is bringing us all as a collective to the purpose, to the point of now you're going to have to prove what you teach. Now you're going to have to prove your understanding, and not proving it to another individual outside of you or proving it in a debate. Now you're going to have to prove it with the spirit man. Now our teachings and our understandings now have to be revealed in us. What does that mean? Manifested in your lifestyle. Manifested in your senses. Manifested in your understanding. Manifested in your actions. Manifested in your conversations. Manifested in your manifestations. Right? So Passover represented the passing over from one state of consciousness into the next. And that's where Spirit has us, whether you want to go or not. Whether we choose to take on the ascension of this planet or not is going to happen with or without us. And all you have to do is look around at the senses that are playing itself out in the planet. Whether it be the destructive hurricanes and the tornadoes, whether it be the flooding of different parts of the world, whether it be the vengeful murders that we have been seeing take place, the planet is showing its senses. The planet is raging in emotions and is trying to get us ready. It's trying to get us acclimated to the new, I love that, Alicia, to the new equilibrium of the planet. And if your frequency doesn't fit the equilibrium of the planet, there's only one thing that can happen. Spirit has to Spirit has to delete you from the programming altogether. Because if not, you'll continue to cause the system to crash. Whether that's the system in your own individual world, or whether that's the system that we see happening or playing out on a collective level. Spirit is changing the equilibrium of this planet. So right now, we're in a season of crossing over, of passing over from your one way of operating and of understanding and of being and of perceiving the world into a new state of consciousness. Passover also translated into a mental attitude in which we are bridging from an old state. So what mental attitudes are you doing away with? What mental attitudes haven't been serving you? What mental attitudes have been working against the Aries fire that you should be using to produce and to create with? What is stifling your power? What is stifling your individuality? What is stifling your loyalty and your commitment to your own self and to your own dreams? What mental attitudes are doing you in or will do you in this next season? As we come into the season, of what some will call the winter. What are going to be the things that you are doing away with as you go into hibernation? How have you prepared for this fall season? How have you prepared your mind? How have you prepared your bodies and your homes? What have you stored yourself up with? And I'm not talking about physical things. I'm talking about the spirit man. What have you stored up? Because I'm gonna tell y'all this. And I feel like I say it often. Outside ritual is not going to keep you filled. Outwardly, roots and bones, divination practices, lighting candles, lighting lamps, none of these things are going to keep you filled. You got to learn how to keep the lamp within you lit. That's what the purpose of our oil lamps that we handcraft here at the sanctuary is for. It's really an outer working that should be teaching you how to keep the lamp, the oil lamp within, which is really the spirit, how to keep that lit, how to keep it sustained. That's why oftentimes a lot of y'all who buy our oil lamps, they sit on your dressers or they sit on your altars because the oil lamp within you is not engaged. So any ritual that you are engaging in outwardly is not going to satisfy you or keep you filled because you're not keeping the first ritual filled, which is this vessel, this body, fortifying this divine mind that we all encompass. Okay? So Passover is really dealing with our mental attitudes. And Spirit is asking us, are you ready to really bridge over from the current state that you're in right now into the new state? Passover represents the allegory of man taking on his Christ consciousness. Not sitting in your church houses on Sundays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Saturdays and giving worship to something outside of you. Your Christ consciousness that should have been taught esoterically was really teaching you about the death and the resurrection of the man, of the physical man, right? Of the spiritual man. How can you die more to yourself? What do you need to crucify? What needs to be laid to rest? What needs to be purged or purified out of you? What aspects of your consciousness do you need to lay down? Because that's what the allegory of the resurrection of Jesus Christ really was. What it really is teaching you, or what Jesus did through crucifying himself, the allegory, we know this didn't happen in real time, but the allegory of Jesus Christ crucifying himself was us watching another man put down his consciousness in order for you to keep yours. So you never have to be aware of your actions. You never have to be aware of your sinful nature. You never have to be aware of your race mind. You never have to be aware of your mental attitudes, because there's nothing holding you accountable. Because the message of Jesus came before you and paid it all. He didn't pay nothing. Because if he paid anything, you wouldn't currently be living in the hell that you find yourself waking up in every day. He didn't pay nothing. He's waiting for you to pick up your cross and to walk with him. Because that's what the Bible said. Right? The Bible said to pick up your cross and to walk with me. That means pick up your own awareness, consciousness. When we're talking about consciousness, we're not talking about some mystical, magical thing that's floating out in the sky around us. We're talking about your awareness. So when the Bible says that Jesus said to pick up your cross and to walk with me, what was being said was that Jesus gave the instruction for you to pick up your own consciousness and walk the same path, the allegoric path that he walked. So that nobody else has to come behind you or before you in order to save you. Save yourself. Because it's possible. Save yourself, because so many people have come before us to give us the keys in order to do so. Save yourself, because you have the power to do so. Save yourself, so that you never have to look outside of yourself for salvation ever again. Save yourself. Okay? So Passover stood for man taking on their own Christ consciousness. Taking on their own Christ consciousness and passing over from being a mortal man who can't function or think or operate on its own, needing something else or someone else to think and advocate and operate on behalf of it. That lower nature, that lower understanding, that lower perception evolving into its godhood of understanding that I am all things. That I stand in the middle of my own universe and I speak those things that be not as though they were. Because I understand that I am a physical manifestation of the pure intelligence that is the cosmic universe. I am a physical manifestation of that. And if I am a physical manifestation of that great big thing, then that means that I cannot incarnate into this vessel and play small. That means that I have to work my vessel. I have to work my being. I have to work my mind until my godhood comes online. Until my awareness shifts from I need to I have all that I need. Right? That your language shifts from help me, give me, to I have all that I ask and need. Right? And anything that I don't need, if it's not on my path yet, then that means that you have no business having it. And 9 times out of 10, Spirit protected us protected a lot of us from a lot of manifestations that we thought we wanted. Spirit protected a lot of you just changing and going and operating in this year. Spirit protected us from a lot of manifestations that we were not ready for. Because it wasn't your spirit man requiring it. Right? Your spirit man had no use of it, but your pleasure and your senses did. And oftentimes, it's your pleasures and your senses that take you off course anyway. And so Spirit is now bringing us to a time of passing over from the mortal man and into our spiritual consciousness, into our awareness. Let's move on to Pentecost. Pentecost is considered the festival of reaping, right? Or also known as the harvest of grains. When we look metaphysically at Pentecost, it translates into the unfoldment of the spiritual mind. So we go from passing over the things that are no longer serving us. We go from passing over the race mind. We go from passing over the personality. We go from passing over the senses. We go from passing over the material. And now we transition into the unfoldment of the spiritual mind. Right? Because as long as you play in your senses, you'll never have access to the things of spirit. Because both minds can't function in the same vessel. That's why you have the devil and you have God. Both serve a purpose. Neither one can be eradicated without eradicating the whole. But at some point, the devil and God has to find their wisdom and understanding when is their time to play. Right? And we know that each being serves a purpose, because the devil always had to go to God in order to get permission to make your life a living hell. So we know they both serve a purpose. If you believe in the devil and God in that way, if you were to ask me who those beings were, I'm going to point to the mortal man. You are the devil and the God that operates in your life. You are standing on both shoulders. So how can you balance the two? By bringing them both under your dominion. Not separating them and choosing one for the other, but by bringing both of them under your dominion. And how do you do that? By understanding the wholeness of them both separately and then understanding them both collectively. How does your devil serve you? How does your devil serve you in your wins? How does your devil serve you in your losses? How is God serving you? Is God enabling you? Is God enabling your behaviors? Because oftentimes, it's not God that's a problem. It's not the devil that's a problem for you. It's God. Because some of y'all guys don't hold y'all accountable. Some of y'all guys are not requiring you to come up higher. And I'm not talking about the God outside of you. I'm talking about the God that you wake up and look at every single day, that you go and you pass a mirror. That God. Is God enabling you? Is God holding you accountable? Does God have a moral compass? Does God know when to not be God and to be the devil? Right? The unfoldment of the spiritual mind is what Pentecost translates into. It also goes on to say that Pentecost in the current it says that in this current period, when ideas that we have meditated on and accepted as true spring forward into consciousness, becoming living realities in our lives instead of mere mental concepts. And that's why I said earlier that a lot of times God saved us from the things that you thought that you wanted to manifest. Because some of your thoughts need to stay as mere passing thoughts. Not every one of your thoughts need to be brought into the physical. Some of your thoughts need to stay within your mind so that spirit continues to exercise everything out of it that will eventually destroy you in the future. Right? So Pentecost at this time is really coming to tell us that spirit is really dealing with us on our thoughts and the things that we've been manifesting since the last full moon in Libra, because they go together. And they go together mainly because the planetary aspects that were happening during this full moon in Aries were similar to the planetary energies that were playing, along with each other during the full moon in Libra. And so spirit is really desiring for us to really assess, what was your thought process? What was your thought process during that time, starting from April the 15th until today, as this Aries and full moon closes out? Because we're still going to be dealing with this energy a little bit, even after, the specified 3 days that the full moon energy lingers with us. For a lot of us, we're still going to be feeling the lessons of this full moon in Aries. And so this energy is really asking us to really think on and to really assess where your mind was from April the 15th until now. And what were some of the mental seeds that you were planting? Right? Because as you assess what a lot of those mental seeds were that you were planting, it's going to help you really understand even more the horrors that some of you may be seeing as we come into these winter months. And it's only going to be for you to decide whether you planted good seeds or not. Right? So spirit is desiring for us to come into the energy of Pentecost and really deal with the unfolding of the spiritual mind. Right? And to really begin to assess the mental seeds that we've been planting and meditating on since the full moon in Libra. Right? And determining whether some of those seeds should have stayed in your mind, and then figuring out how a lot of those seeds are now going to affect you moving forward. If some of those seeds that have begun to grow, are you able to go back and to weed away what doesn't belong? Or are you going to be able to use a lot of those mental seeds that you planted since the full moon in Libra? Right? Let's keep going. Let's look at the Feast of Tabernacles. When we look at the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles was another festival that was engaged, that the Jews engaged in, or the Catholic people engaged in. And even a lot of the church today still engage in. And we're going to be dealing with festivals. We're dealing with festivals for a reason, because it's all going to make sense. The Feast of Tabernacles was a festival gathering much like Thanksgiving, right? When we look metaphysically at the Feast of Tabernacles, it translates, or it represented, or it marked the deliverance of the children of Israel from their 40 years of being in the wilderness, right? And their journey towards the promised land. And on a couple lives ago, I remember one of the lives really dealing with the promised land. And spirit really desiring for us to not lose focus of the individual promised lands that we were all walking into if you did the work. And spirit first began dealing with us as it relates to this as it relates to the wilderness and as it relates to the promised land during our full moon and Aquarius collective meditation. And I believe that was in Minds and Borrow's collective meditation space. And so I don't think I ever got on here and was able to share a lot of the downloads that came from that particular full moon. But briefly, Spirit really gave us the awareness that we were all standing under open heavens, you know, and that whatever it was that you were desiring to see manifest before you, all you had to do was reach up and to pull it down with your mental attitude. Not with your emotions, not with your senses, but with the healthy mental attitudes that you have been developing over this last year. Because a lot of times it's not about what it is that we want to manifest. A lot of times it boils down to if you can pull it. If you can pull it from the spirit world. If you built your divine mind up to the point where you're able to utilize it to work for you in this lifetime. Or if you're allowing the most powerful tool that we all encompass here in this same living reality, that we all get the same amount of hours and days up in. If you're allowing this divine mind that you encompass to either be a tool used against you, or if you have been working to master this divine mind that you encompass in order to work on behalf of you. So during that full moon in Aquarius, Spirit was really letting us know that we were under an open heaven. And under that open heaven, Spirit will begin dealing with us concerning these three things: Pentecost, Passover, and the Feast of Tabernacles. So when we continue to look more metaphysically at the Feast of Tabernacles, it's two words that I want to look at here. I want to look at wilderness and I want to look at promised land. When we look metaphysically at wilderness, it translates into meaning or to representing an individual consciousness, right? An individual consciousness and the multitude of undisciplined and uncultivated thoughts. Wilderness translates into meaning or to representing an individual consciousness and the multitude of undisciplined and uncultivated thoughts. So here we see Spirit first dealing with us as it relates to moving from one level of consciousness and elevating into the next, or moving from one state of being into a new state of being, or from moving from mortal man and taking up our own Christ consciousness, picking up our own cross into walking with it. So ascending from your lower man to your higher nature. So Spirit began to deal with us in Passover, which is teaching us the lesson of passing over from one aspect of ourselves and ascending to the highest aspect of ourselves. Then Spirit took us to the point of Pentecost, which was showing us the unfoldment of the spiritual mind when we take on the mission of ascension, right? Or when we take on the awareness of our Christ consciousness. Letting us know that all of those mental attitudes, all of those mental seeds that we've been planting, you're going to begin to see the harvest of your mind. You're going to begin to see the harvest of your thinking. And so soon as we move to the end of the year, a lot of us will begin to see if we planted gardens of weeds or if we planted gardens of flowers and of herbs and of fruits and of vegetables, things that are going to sustain you. Right? So wilderness translates into or represents an individual consciousness and the multitude of undisciplined and uncultivated thoughts. So within this full moon in Aries, Spirit is really dealing with us as it relates to your undisciplined thoughts. What parts of your nature aren't you disciplining? What parts of your mind aren't you cultivating or taking time to understand or to uproot and to replant? What parts of yourself are you leaving uncultivated? Because as long as you put off the work, the longer you're going to find yourself walking a journey in the wilderness. And you don't need 50 tarot readings to tell you that. Do the work of the self for real, or continue to walk in an illusion. Because once all the hype of spirituality goes away, once all of the fad of spirituality goes away, once all of the glitz and the glams and the power that comes with playing in the spirit, once all of those things fall away, once your audience goes away, right? Once your yes men go away, once the agreeable people who agree with what you see and how you see, once all of those things go away, the only thing that you're going to be left with is yourself. So you better be sure that you're really doing the work of disciplining everything within your nature that is out of line or out of order. Making sure that you're taking the time to really cultivate your own garden. Because I keep saying, we can get on these platforms and find all the wonderful words to say and find all the most wonderful things to accomplish, and none of it means nothing if you didn't accomplish the one thing that we've all been set on this journey to accomplish, which is really understanding the nature of the self and bringing the nature of the self back into harmony with the nature of this reality, the nature of the planet. Right? This is where spirit has us. In the season of really disciplining the body, disciplining the mind, and disciplining the self, in order for you to really cultivate the spirit. Okay? So wilderness translates into the multitude of undisciplined and uncultivated thoughts. Let's look at promised land. When we look at promised land, it translates into the realization of divine substance when there was up in a man a great desire to be free from the bondage of ignorance and animal propensities. His journey to the promised land begins. Right? So your journey you don't arrive at the promised land when you come into $1 million, or you come into 1 million followers, or you have access to things that you never thought that you would have access to. Right? The promised land is not making the right connections. Right? The promised land is not getting to the biggest bag. The promised land is not arriving to a point in life where you have nothing else to worry about. The promised land is a realization of divine substance, where there wells up in a man a great desire to be free from the bondage of ignorance, the bondage of not knowing, right? Free from the bondage of animal propensities, meaning your senses, leaning on the senses, leaning on the emotion, operating in the emotion and out of the emotion, worrying about only what you can get out of this life, being fixated on manifesting every little thing, turning manifestation into a get rich quick scheme. Right? How can we be free from these things? Right? And when we come to the realization that none of these things are going to make your existence or break your existence, you make your first connection with divine substance. When you understand that all you ever really needed was this, of what's in here, of what's in here. trusting your intuition. Trusting that you have the answers necessary to take you to the places in life that you need to be. And not for you to arrive there to be able to go to the the highest building and say, look, I made it. Look what I accomplished. But this journey is really for you to understand that the only thing and the only person you ever needed was yourself. The only mission that you ever had to understand was the mission of your own divine substance. Metaphysically, Promised Land goes on to say that the Promised Land represents, or goes on to say that the redeemed body is the Promised Land. When you have full anonymity, I'm sure I said that wrong, over your own body. When you have full control over your own thoughts. When you have the power to decide for your own self. That you're not influenced by any other thing outside of you. The redeemed body is the Promised Land. Right? When man rediscovers this lost domain, all the promises of the scripture will be fulfilled. So the fulfilling of the scripture has nothing to do with anything outside of us. Not with any government outside of us. Not with any church or religious system outside of us. Right? But it really represents the body and the mind, and really understanding those two. That's the only lost domain that we're all trying to rediscover or recapture for ourselves. This life journey is really about rediscovering yourself, rediscovering your childlike nature, rediscovering how you understand source and how you interact with source. When really what you're doing is interacting with yourself. Right? So the Promised Land tells us that the redeemed body is the Promised Land. And that when man rediscovers this lost domain, the scriptures will be fulfilled. So when you do the work of the self, you're inevitably fulfilling the scripture. Right? And you could be fulfilling the scripture in a good way, and you see the goodness and the favor of source. Or you could be fulfilling the scripture in a way to where you damn your whole existence. And not damning yourself with things outside of you or connections outside of you, but you damn your own self because you deny your own self. You damn your own self when you don't trust what it is that you know to be true. You damn yourself when you deny the work of the self. Right? And so when we make the choice to do the work, to do the shadow work, to engage in the death process, we're really fulfilling our own scriptures. We're writing our own Bibles. Your life becomes a grimoire that generations after us will look on and be able to either reflect and find their own salvation in, right? Or that the generations that come after us, we leave complete turmoil. Therefore making it impossible for them to really come to the understanding of what this whole existence is about. It's not about money. It's not about accumulating things. It's not about achieving goals. It's not about manifesting superficial things. Get those things. Get whatever it is that you feel like you should be doing in this lifetime. Get those things, but don't negate the journey of the self. Understand that that is what will always matter, right? And so when we redeem the body, we redeem the promised land. When we do the work of the self, we do the work of spirit, right? So the Feast of Trumpets comes after the Feast of Tabernacles. And when we look at the Feast of Trumpets was only read during a full moon or a new moon. And it was basically a song that was sung to usher in what the Jews considered their new year, right? And the title of Rosh Hashanah could also be translated into the head of the year. And when we look astrologically at what zodiac sign represents the head of the year, it would in fact be Aries. And so I give thanks for Spirit for validating this message to be given during this full moon in Aries, because Spirit is really dealing with us and the energy of Aries, meaning dealing with the self. How you see the self, how you interact with the self, how the self shows up in the world as on a collective level, and how the self shows up in the world on an individual level. So like I was saying earlier, if you want to know how where you are as it relates to where we are in the year and the work that you've done, if you want to know why your harvest is showing up the way that it is during this fall season, as we come into the season of what some will call hibernation. If you want to know why your harvest is showing up the way that it's showing up, you want to definitely look back at the full moon in Libra, which was on April the 16th was the last full moon in Libra. You want to look at where your mind was during that time, where your thoughts were during that time, what seeds you planted during that time. And when you understand where you were during this full moon in Libra on April the 16th, Spirit is going to give you a clear picture of what to expect during these next few winter months, because these were the mental seeds that you were planting during this full moon in Libra that was on April 16th, 2022. Okay, for those of you who may be new to astrology and are unaware of what the full moon is, understand that a full moon always takes place while the moon ruler, which represents the internal self, is forming an opposition with the sun, which represents your external self, right? And this inevitably creates turmoil, forcing you to deal with not only your external self, but your internal self. And this is what this full moon in Aries is really desiring for us to deal with, right? How is your external self and your internal self, how are they in balance? How are they in harmony? How are they functioning with each other? When we look back at the full moon in Libra that took place on April 16, 2022, that full moon dealt with the need to balance our authentic desires, and our self-assertion, especially as it relates to other people. How were you exerting yourself? And were you being authentic in your desires? That full moon in Libra on April the 16th also dealt with the energy of compromise. Were you compromising too much? Were you not compromising enough? Right? And not only looking at that compromise as it relates to the self, but how are you compromising or not compromising with the people around you? The full moon in Libra on April the 16th caused us to really examine our relationships with others. In determining whether they were balanced, whether there was some justice that needed to be served or severed. And at that time, the sun was also positioned in Aries, right? And Aries is a fire sign. And so Aries energy really forces us to assert ourselves, right? It really forces us to start things, to ignite things, to go after the things that we need. So at that time, the sun and the moon being in Aries and in Libra were dancing with each other, right? And this moon gave us the opportunity to really learn how to improve our relationships through compromise and compassion. So that's where you found yourself, or where you should have found yourself during that full moon in Libra on April the 16th. It was really dealing with how you interact with the world around you, how you interact with your relationships around you. And what mental attitudes did you plant to either better the relationships because they were serving you, or what are some of the things and the seeds that you needed to uproot because you know that at some point it was going to be a disservice to you. So that full moon in Libra was really a balancing act during the 16th. And so now with this full moon in Aries, Spirit is really desiring for you to assess all that you balanced. And if you did a good job at balancing. Or did you compromise too much with balancing? Did you overdo it? Right? Or did you underdo it? And as we finish, as we continue to, acclimate to these winter months, many of us are really going to be able to see the fruits of our labor and to really see the fruits of our minds and where we've been so far as this year plays out. This full moon currently that we're in, or that we're currently out of, because I really came on at the end of the full moon in Aries energy, but this full moon is dancing with Chiron. And Chiron in astrology is considered the wounded healer. And so this Aries full moon is also urging you to jumpstart the healing of your wounds. How are your wounds continuing to present themselves at this stage in your life? Are they, setting you back and causing you to repeat experiences? Or have you find yourself at a stage to where you've been doing the work of Chiron as it relates to your natal chart? Have you been assisting the wounded healer as the wounded healer has been assisting you? Or have you been suppressing the dirty work? And so this full moon, you may have found a lot of unhealed wounds coming up for you. And being very sure that you're taking the time to do the work as it relates to these wounds, because if you don't, the harvest that you reap in these winter months is going to set you back. And that's why Spirit keeps getting us into having sometimes, I think, the same repetitive conversations, because I think oftentimes we're waiting for Spirit to change the message, but we won't change our interactions. We won't change the way we're operating in our daily individual lives. We won't change the way we're operating, as a collective, but we're waiting for Spirit to change the message. And Spirit is saying, I'm waiting for you to change the action in order for me to change the message. I'm waiting for you to deal with the wounds so that we can begin the healing process. Right? So with this full moon in Aries, you probably found a lot of your old wounds coming up or old traumas resurfacing. And so just as the moon and the sun was playing in that Aries Libra axis during the full moon in Libra on April the 16th, 2022 of this year, we find that same Aries Libra energy with the moon now being in the zodiac sign of Aries, and the sun at the time that the full moon was coming in was in the sign of Libra. We see that same energy coming forward from April the 16th. But this time, Spirit is not concerned with you balancing or finding justice within the collective or with the people around you. Spirit is really urging for you to find harmony and to find diplomacy and to find compromise with yourself, with your relationship with yourself. The Aries and Libra axis represents your individuality and your independence as opposed to your partnerships and loyalties. So, like I was saying earlier, how are you being loyal to yourself? How are you compromising with yourself? Are you quicker to compromise with people and things outside of you than you are with yourself? Are you holding yourself accountable to the same boundaries that you are giving to people outside of you? Are you finding that you're being more hard on yourself when Spirit is trying to get you to be gentle with your conversations with yourself, with the tone that you take with yourself, with the advice that you give yourself? Okay? So Spirit is really charging for us to really find harmony and cooperation with ourselves, and to really rectify those wounds and those traumas as it relates to the self. How have you inflicted trauma to yourself? How have you continued to open wounds for yourself that had nothing to do with people outside of you? How have you been the wounded warrior to yourself? Right? When this Aries energy first started coming in the shadow of the full moon, it was coming in two ways, and it was coming in its polarity. And we know that each zodiac sign has its polarities. When we look at the energy of Aries in its empowered way, it represents warriorship, leadership, pioneering, and confidence. And so these are the gems that you need to pick up as we move along in these winter months. And what ways do you need to show up as the warrior in your life? And what ways do you need to find leadership or be and operate in leadership? And what ways are you running away from leadership? And what ways are you using your time here to pioneer the change that you desire to see? And what ways are you using the power of pioneering change in your own individual life, even if it doesn't concern the collective? How can you continue to do the healing for yourself when the collective has no say or no part of it at all? How can you continue the healing in your own individual self, even if the world is not moving that way? How can you continue pioneering the healing in your own individual life? And then how can you find the confidence to continue the work even when the world is desiring for you to get off of it because the world is moving in a different direction? How can you continue to remain in the confidence of doing the work of the self? And then when we look at the shadow side of Aries, it deals with agitation, with fights, with aggression, with frustration, lashing out in anger. And Spirit is really desiring for us to use this energy of this Aries Libra axis to really balance our shadow with our empowered self. How can you balance your agitation and your aggression? As we see so much lashing out and so much agitation just bubbling in the collective around us. How can you operate as a leader in this time? Even if you don't know you're leading people, how can you be the example even when you don't want to be the example right now? One way that we can do this is by paying attention to the division that we create in our own minds. And what ways can you deal with the division of the self? And what ways do you go against yourself every day? So one way to operate and to utilize this Aries full moon is to really begin to deal with the ways that you create division in your mind and separation in your mind. Are you separating your actions, okay, from your desires? Are you causing division between what you feel and what it is that you know? How can you deal with that separation? And keep in mind also that as I get ready to close, as we come out of this full moon in Aries, we are preparing to go into eclipse season starting this weekend. So hold your horses. We're not out of this heavy transformational energy yet. We're just getting started. And so this is why Spirit is really desiring for you to deal with the division and to deal with the separation. Because as we come into eclipse season, the only thing that eclipse season is going to do is bring even more change and even more transformation. When we look at the symbolism of the eclipse or eclipse season, eclipses deal with or are harbingers of change. Eclipse seasons usher in evolution. During eclipse season, we need to prepare ourselves for faded endings, meaning you don't have a choice. Meaning that Spirit gave you a choice all year until we got to eclipse season for you to make the right decisions. And so if you didn't make any of the right decisions, be prepared for Spirit to sit you down because of the decisions that you made, right? Or to force you into the decisions that you weren't brave enough to make. So as we come into eclipse season, get ready for breakdowns and breakthroughs, understanding that all these things are coming to serve you if you allow it to. But they'll resist you if you resist it too. Right? And so as I close, I want to give some of the channeled messages that Spirit is leaving us with as we close out this full moon in Aries and we get ready to take on and to welcome in the energy of the eclipse. A lot of the things that Spirit is desiring for us to be mindful of and to look forward to seeing is to pay attention to the polarity that's happening around you. Understand that nothing is all right and nothing is all bad. But understand the polarity in your existence. Spirit is also saying that a lot of the prayers and the messages that have been being sent forth as it relates to restructuring, redirecting, and reorganizing and repreparing the collective in order to meet the needs of ascension are being heard. So Spirit is sending a message during this full moon in Aries by saying that we are responding to, we are listening to the calls and the prayers of the collective. But with answering the calls of the collective, also understand that there is a gentle rebuke that comes with it. Spirit is saying that there's going to be a heavy focus on 10th house things and the 10th month of the year, which starts next month. As we come into next month, understand that there is about to be some drastic, if not catastrophic, changes that take place with public structures, with businesses, with governments. There is heavy crone energy coming in as we get ready to take on next month. Spirit is saying that there's going to be a changing and a reverting back to the original calendar. During this full moon in Aries, Spirit was really dealing with me heavily concerning the original calendar. And I encourage you all, if you don't know what the original calendar is, to start researching what the original calendar was so that you can really understand the original time. And once you understand the original time, it's going to help you understand the time that you're standing in right now. So Spirit is saying that in some way we're going to begin to see the collective revert back to the original calendar, the original way of understanding time, the original way of dealing in time and with time. With these channel messages comes a strong I'm trying to see what word I want to use. It's not a threat, but it's a promise that there will be a complete eradication of the Roman calendar. And Spirit, speaking about heavy judgment as it relates to the changing of time, the changing of planetary time. With the complete eradication of the Roman calendar comes the complete destruction of the Roman Catholic Church, also known as the Pontiff Maximus. The Pontiff Maximus. And I got it here because I wanted to make sure I said it right, y'all, because I be pronouncing
Pontifex Maximus.
The Pontifex Maximus. So along with the complete eradication of the Roman calendar comes the complete destruction of the Roman Catholic Church, also known as the Pontiff Maximus. The Divine Mother is calling destruction to every aspect of the priesthood as it relates to the Roman Catholic Church. We talk so heavily about festivals today because Spirit is taking us from the outwardly pagan ritualization of understanding these festivals, and now really allowing Spirit to give us the complete revelation of what these festivals were really meant to teach. The Feast of Tabernacles, Passover, and Pentecost. The Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. All of these festivals served a purpose, but they were hijacked. And so with these channeled messages and with the complete destruction of the priesthood as it relates to the Roman Catholic Church, Spirit is also calling an eradication to the festivals, to holiday festivals. And so Spirit is really charging us as a collective to really figure out what rituals as it relates to how you understand time, of how you celebrate time, of how you celebrate seasons, of how you understand planetary energies. There's going to be a new way of operating in festivals or operating in celebration. And so there's about to be a complete eradication of holidays, of festivals like Easter or like Passover or like Christmas. And at the point that these things were hijacked, Spirit is reverting them back to the original nature, or reverting each of these things back to its original nature. And so the Divine Mother is sending warning of the eradication of your festivals and the reestablishing of the original order and reestablishing us back to natural law. And so Spirit is saying, I've heard the prayers of the collective. But in order for me to fulfill them, you're going to have to let go of your illusions completely. Also with this full moon and Aries, Spirit is really bringing forth and using the message of the Leviathan. I encourage you all to watch the movie Hellraiser. They just redid it. And you guys, those of you who have Hulu accounts, they have it on Hulu. You can watch it for free. But I encourage you all to watch the movie Hellraiser. And when you watch this movie, there's a couple things Spirit really wants you to pay attention to. When we look at the Leviathan was a sea serpent. And you can find it in theology and in mythology. The Leviathan was referenced in the book of Psalms, in the book of Job, the book of Isaiah. It was referenced in the book of Amos. It was referenced in the book of Jonah. And it was also referenced in the book of Enoch. And when we look at the symbolism of the Leviathan, this was a sea serpent. It was a sea serpent. But more than that, the Leviathan was really coming to teach us about ourselves. And I want you all to watch the Hellraiser, because there's a point in the movie where the man conjures the spirit of the Leviathan. And I want to read something to y'all too. So I'm just pulling up my notes, y'all. So the Leviathan was never meant to be a literal creature. But the Leviathan was more so a mythical symbolism that stands for a powerful force within our astral natures. The Leviathan deals with our desires and with our emotions. This is why the Leviathan was a representation of a sea serpent. When we deal with water, we're dealing with the emotions, or we're dealing with the psyche. The sea in ancient literature was always symbolic of the nature and the passions of the astral body, which is responsible for our emotions. The astral body is the greatest primordial sea that the serpent, aka the lower desires, or the lower desire-minded ego, arises from. Thus, the purpose of God's discourse here is to speak to Job about his desires and passions as it relates to his lower nature. When we look at the lower nature, it carries the symbol of the Leviathan. And when we look at the spirit of the Leviathan really dealt with the changing of words, right? The spirit of the Leviathan dealt with turning people against people and nations against nations. The Leviathan spirit dealt with rebellion against God. The Leviathan spirit also dealt with insomnia, lack of spiritual growth, media deception, pride, and personal bickering. And so here we see the message of the Leviathan being given in two ways. One, the message of the Leviathan is symbolic for spirit really desiring for us to deal with the lower nature as it relates to the astral body, right? And this validates everything that we were talking about previously, about spirit preparing us to pass over from one aspect of our nature in order for us to transition to the highest aspect of our nature, right? And so the message of the Leviathan is really desiring for you to deal with your rebellion, to deal with your unrest, to deal with how you turn people's words against them, to deal with how people may be turning your own words against you. The Leviathan deals with your lack of spiritual growth, okay? It deals with your own personal bickering. It deals with your pride, and it deals with how you are allowing yourself to willfully be deceived by the media. So here we see the Leviathan coming up and spirit charging for you to deal with the Leviathan as it relates to your own nature. And in that same way that spirit is dealing with or charging us to deal with the Leviathan as it relates to our own nature, spirit is also urging us and is calling out the spirit of the Leviathan as it relates to the collective. And the Divine Mother is speaking to the powers that be as it relates to the collective, and is telling you that we're calling it out by nature. We're calling it out by name. And the movie The Hellraiser, the remake of it, there's a point in the movie where you see this man conjuring the spirit of Leviathan. And that's why we have to really pay attention to the way in which media is being given back to you. And it's also a reason why we really need to understand that everything is ritual, whether you want to accept it or not. And the longer that you take to come into the understanding that everything is ritual, is the longer that you are unable to block the ritual as it's being given to you through your own receptors, through the eye receptor, through the ear receptor, through the heart receptor, right? Everything that we interact with is physically interacting with us. You're spending your currency on it. And so here we see the powers that be conjure the spirit of Leviathan. And so what we're going to begin to see is an even greater uptake of people in the media turning their words against each other, or turning the collective words against each other. We're going to begin to see an instigation of unrest. You first saw it happening with Kanye West and the declaring of White Lives Matter, wearing a t-shirt. And one of the messages of this full moon that Spirit is really trying to give to melanated people is to get out of your feelings. You're too emotional. Get out of your own feelings and get to the point where you're able to identify when people are trying to conjure your energy for their own use. You're not getting anything out of it. And so after Kanye West conjured your emotions, right, got you in your feelings, a few days later, you wake up today and boom, you have a police officer who shot and either left a boy brain dead or shot and murdered him. Either way, they got your attention. And you added energy to their ritual. Instead of girding up your own loins, instead of putting on your own protection of armor and finding a different way to fight a physical battle that's not physical. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers in high places. Not on the physical plane. You're in a mental and an emotional world. Welcome to the age of Aquarius. Don't nobody got to touch you to disposition you. Nobody has to physically touch you to make you a danger to yourself. They only had to access and to tap your mind, to tap your senses, to tap your emotions. Right? And so this is why this Aries full moon is really charging you to pass over your senses, to become greater than your senses, right? In order for you to see the unveiling of your spiritual mind, of your spiritual nature, in order for you to come out of your own wilderness, your undisciplined and uncultivated thoughts and behaviors, right? In order to bring you into your own individual promised land, which is the realization of your own divine substance. When we come to the realization finally of really understanding the power of the divine substance that we hold, we'll start to become very, very mindful about who we allow and what we allow to come in and to manipulate it. And so this is why Spirit needs to take you from your mortal man and transcend you to your higher nature so that you can ascend the bullshit that's happening around you. So that when you see the bullshit coming, you don't even interact with it. So that when you see somebody wear something that you don't like, or say something that you don't like, or do something that you don't like, that you mind your business and you stay in position as it relates to your individual self. Not getting worked up and emotional over a t-shirt because you think on some level it's undoing a movement that never began. Because this same movement that we are emotional about has been sitting in the same position since Trayvon Martin died. Nothing has changed. No new laws were put into place. But they tapped your emotions. They fucked with your psyche. They got you worked up for nothing. It served you nothing. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers and high. Get to the high places so you don't have to fight the physical war. Ascend to the high places so that the physical things can't even touch you. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers in high places. Get to the high places so that you stop descending to their level whenever they need you to be there. Move past your senses. Move past your emotions. Because Spirit is saying, I'm dealing with the Leviathan spirit. I'm dealing with the powers that be. How am I dealing with them? I'm trying to make you aware. I'm trying to give you awareness that is there. Right? In order for you to pull it down. Because it can't touch you. Spirit is saying, I'm dealing with the Leviathan spirit. On the collective level. I need you to deal with the Leviathan spirit as it relates to your individual nature. Okay? And then the Music Mancy meditations, and then I'm done, y'all. The Music Mancy meditation that Spirit is giving for us to focus on as we close out this full moon in Aries is 3 songs. The first song is by Drake and it's called You and the Six. And the intuitive messages from this song is Spirit is really saying that it's time for you to begin having some of you. It's time for some of you to begin to have some clearing conversations with your mothers. Whether those mothers be on the physical plane or whether that mother energy is the celestial energy at this point. But this full moon in Aries, the divine mother or the divine feminine energy is stepping forward. There is a lot of murdering taking place right now of the divine feminine. Specifically the melanated divine feminine, and Spirit is really desiring for the melanated divine feminine to become very serious about protecting yourself, not only on a physical level, but you need to really begin protecting yourself in the things of spirit. Because if you gird yourself up spiritually, nothing will be able to touch you in the physical. The divine mother is really trying to get the melanated divine feminine to come back into order. Because until you come back into order, the mother is saying, I can't protect you. I can't keep you safe. There is an interaction that is happening right now between the melanated divine feminine and the melanated divine masculine. There needs to be a balance there. And before we can get to the balance, there needs to be an atonement going both ways. There is an atonement that Source is calling down onto this planet. And Spirit continues to take me back to when we first created our Awakened Man collection here at the Sanctuary. And the Divine Mother gave the call then to the Divine Masculine. That if you did not make an atonement to the Divine Feminine, that the judgment that you were facing then would do nothing but amplify now. And so the Divine Mother is really desiring for us to come into atonement and to balance this out of order energy that we see happening with the Divine Masculine and with the Divine Feminine. There is an eradication that is taking place as it relates to the melanated Divine Feminine. And Spirit is desiring for you to protect yourself and to protect the Divine Feminine that has direct access to you. So the Music Mancy channeled message from Drake's song, You and the Six. It's time for some of you to begin having conversations with this mother energy, whether it be your physical mother or your mother, your celestial one. This Music Mancy meditation is also telling you that it's time to dive and to dig even deeper into your shadows. Through this Music Mancy meditation song, Spirit is really asking you under this Aries full moon, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to protect the Divine Feminine? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to protect the Divine Feminine? In this season, what have you done to protect the Divine Feminine? The next Music Mancy song is a song called Bachata. It's by a group called Random Rap. And the message from this song is Spirit is really desiring for us to engage in dancing, aka movement, and get those energy blocks moved. Get that pent up and stagnant energy moved. And so if you do nothing else to close out this full moon and Aries energy, Spirit is desiring for you to move and to make movement. So dancing is a wonderful way to release energy. And the last song, Music Mancy meditation song that Spirit is giving for us, giving to us under this full moon in Aries, is a song by Yeba called The Age of Worry. And the message from this song is simply, don't be afraid to walk alone in this season. Don't be afraid to do it by yourself. Don't be afraid to start with people and to look around and see that you ended up by yourself. Keep walking. Spirit is desiring for you to build yourself an armor, meaning build up your emotions. Build up your stability. Okay? Build up your perceptions. Build up your wisdom. Build up the trusting of yourself. Build yourself an armor. Equip yourself with spirit-filled and high-frequency affirmations every single day. Fill yourself up and build an armor so that nothing is touching you as you journey this thing called life. The next message is Spirit is really asking you through this song. Spirit is desiring for you to ask worry, why should you care? The things that you're worrying about. Ask the things that are causing you to worry. Why should I care? Why should I worry? What good is it doing for you? What ways and doors are worry opening up for you? And what ways are worry meeting your needs? Some of you need to have a conversation with worry and get on the same page. Okay? The second to last message from this song is Spirit is really asking you, or is really telling you that your fight is not with anybody else. Your fight is with yourself. Your fight is not with things outside of you. It's not with people outside of you. It's not with experiences outside of you. It's not with trauma. Your fight is with yourself. Your accomplishments are with yourself. The answers that you seek are within yourself. Okay? And the last message of this song, Spirit is really desiring for you under this full moon in Aries. Spirit is really desiring for you to make friends with what and who you are. Stop looking for outside acceptance. Stop looking for people to be your friend or to do right by you in friendship. And Spirit is really desiring for us as we come out of this full moon in Aries to really make friends with yourself. Make peace with your experience. Find a way to make light, to make joy, to find harmony in the individual cards that you were given. Okay? Make friends with yourself. Find the greatest relationship within yourself and then cultivate that. And then discipline it. Discipline your actions. Discipline your perceptions. Discipline the words that you speak. And then begin to bring into discipline the things outside of you. Because as the head goes, so shall the body follow. Meaning, until you come into order, the things outside of you will never be able to find it or to touch order, to imagine order, let alone bring order to your door. You must first assume the position of order. Okay? You must first acclimate your tongue to order. And then order will find you. Then you'll have unrestricted access to the highest aspects and to the highest possibilities of all and what you could be in this lifetime. But first you got to pass over this version that you find yourself right now being under this full moon in Aries. Okay? And so this brings a close to this full moon in Aries Art of Ritual impromptu episode. But I truly hope that this live finds you wherever you are on your journey, and that you were able to take something away that will help you to better understand where you are, or that will be able to help you acclimate even greater into the being that you're becoming, and to understand that you're doing an amazing job. This spiritual walk is not easy, and I think oftentimes we look for it to be easy, or we look for it to pass over soon in order for us to get to the good parts. And then when you get to the good parts, you aren't able to enjoy the good parts because you're overwhelmed with what you manifested. And so to alleviate that would be for you to take time as you're trying to get to the other side of the journey to enjoy the walk. Because as you're enjoying the walk, you're able to pick up the necessary tools that you need in order to help you sustain what it is that you're creating. Right? So when you find yourself becoming overwhelmed in the experience that you created, you got something to reach back and pull out of your pocket and say, I felt this on a journey. I felt this gem along the journey. And that was going to help me walk 10 more steps. Because I picked up this gem along the way. Because I got the lesson along the way. I'm not rushing to the results. I'm enjoying the journey. And so, I hope that you all have been enjoying the journey so far. It's been a beautiful year. It's been a transformative year. And it's only getting started. And so, If this live has served you in any kind of way, I encourage you guys to leave a comment, interact with us here at the sanctuary, or if you know somebody who could use this live because they may find themselves on a transformational journey as it relates to their own lives, feel free to share this with a friend or to share it with a family member so that they know they're not in a season of being lost. They're in a season of passing over. Okay? And so until next time, I thank y'all for joining me. It was so good to see everybody in the building again. I thank y'all for coming on and being with us. Alicia says, so beautifully said, the whole message. Much love and deepest respect. I love you and I thank you so much for sharing. I love you too, Leash, for real. Hey, Zen, I love you. And so I love y'all. Y'all know I talk too much, so let me hurry up and get off of here. But I thank y'all for joining us for this impromptu full moon in Aries art ritual. And until next time, y'all, peace.